Light in the darkness, the beginning of John's Gospel. The rooster's crow pierced the dawn, each note hammering into Peter's soul like nails. His hands trembled as he staggered away from the courtyard, the words of denial still burning on his lips. I do not know him. 3 times, just as Jesus had predicted. The bitter taste of betrayal filled his mouth as tears streamed down his face. How had it come to this? He, Simon Peter, the rock upon whom Jesus would build his church, had crumbled before a servant girl's simple question. But to understand Peter's fall, we must first return to the beginning. Not just the beginning of this story, but the very beginning itself. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These words echo across time, not merely as poetry, but as a declaration of profound truth. Before the first star sparked in the darkness, before the first wave crashed upon primordial shores, there was the Word, Logos in Greek, the divine expression of God himself. This wasn't just abstract philosophy, it was the foundation of everything that would follow. The Word wasn't distant or detached. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Imagine the cosmic scale of this truth. The hands that would one day be pierced by nails were the same hands that had scattered the stars across the heavens. The voice that would cry out in agony on the cross was the same voice that had spoken light into existence. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. These words weren't just metaphor. In a world shrouded in spiritual darkness, where power corrupted and religion had become a facade, a light was about to break through. But first, a messenger had to prepare the way. John the Baptist emerged from the wilderness like a voice from another time. Dressed in camel's hair, surviving on locusts and wild honey, he was anything but conventional. Yet people flocked to him by the hundreds, drawn by the raw authenticity of his message. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He was a burning torch, but he knew he wasn't the true light. I am not the Christ, he would declare to anyone who asked. I am the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. His humility was as striking as his appearance. When asked why he baptized, if he wasn't the Messiah, his answer revealed his true purpose. I baptize with water, but among you stands one you do not know, even he who comes after me, the strap of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie. Then came the moment that would change everything. As John baptized in the Jordan, he saw Jesus approaching. His voice trembled with recognition and awe as he proclaimed, "Behold the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world." The Word had become flesh and was dwelling among us. This wasn't just a teacher arriving to share wisdom, or a prophet coming to call for reformation. This was God himself stepping into human history, clothed in vulnerability, ready to reveal himself in a way that would shake the foundations of reality. The light that had sparked the first dawn was now walking in human form, about to begin a journey that would lead through triumph and tragedy, through betrayal and resurrection. As the sun rises over Jerusalem, casting long shadows across the temple courts, we return to Peter, his face wet with tears of regret. He couldn't know it then, but his story of failure would become a testament to grace, his denial transformed into one of the most powerful demonstrations of restoration in human history. But before we witness that redemption, we must walk the path that led to this moment, a path that began before time itself, when the Word first spoke light into darkness. Signs of power, the miracles that revealed glory. The air was thick with anticipation at the wedding in Cana. Laughter and music filled the courtyard as guests celebrated, but Mary's keen eyes noticed the growing anxiety on the servants' faces. The wine was running out, a disaster that would bring shame to the family and mar the celebration. She turned to her son, her quiet words carrying weight beyond their simplicity. "They have no wine." Jesus' response seemed distant. "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." But Mary knew her son. Turning to the servants, she spoke with quiet confidence. "Do whatever he tells you." Her faith would set the stage for what was to come. Six stone water jars stood nearby, each capable of holding 20 to 30 gallons. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus commanded. The servants complied, perhaps wondering about this strange request at a moment of crisis. Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Water transformed to wine, not just any wine, but the finest vintage the master had ever tasted. In this first sign, Jesus revealed his glory, turning a potential moment of shame into an abundance of joy. But this was just the beginning. Word spread through Capernaum of a royal official whose son lay dying. Desperation drove him to seek Jesus, pride forgotten in the face of impending loss. "Sir, come down before my child dies," he pleaded. Jesus' response tested and strengthened his faith. "Go, your son will live." The official took Jesus at his word, and his faith was rewarded. His son was healed at that very hour, proving that distance was no barrier to Jesus' power. Near the sheep gate in Jerusalem lay the pool of Bethesda, its 5 porticos crowded with the sick, blind, and lame. Among them, a man had been paralyzed for 38 years. Imagine those years of watching others find healing while he remained trapped in his broken body. Jesus' question to him seemed almost cruel. "Do you want to be healed?" The man's response revealed years of disappointment. "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up." His eyes held the dull resignation of someone who had given up hope. But Jesus' command cut through decades of helplessness. "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." Immediately, strength flowed into withered limbs. The man who hadn't walked in 38 years stood, picked up his mat, and walked. The religious leaders were outraged. This healing had occurred on the Sabbath. Their rigid interpretation of God's law had become a barrier to experiencing God's power. Jesus' response challenged their understanding. "My Father is working until now, and I am working." This claim to divine authority would mark a turning point in their opposition to him. But perhaps the most dramatic sign came when 5,000 hungry people gathered to hear Jesus teach. As evening approached, the disciples faced an impossible situation. 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough, Philip calculated, his practical mind overwhelmed by the scale of need. Andrew found a boy with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but added hopelessly, "What are they for so many?" Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and began to distribute them. As bread passed from hand to hand, it multiplied. People ate until they were satisfied, and 12 baskets of fragments remained, more than they had started with. This wasn't just about feeding hungry bodies. It was a sign pointing to Jesus as the bread of life, the one who could satisfy the deepest spiritual hunger. These signs weren't merely displays of power, they were revelations of who Jesus was. Each miracle peeled back another layer of his identity. Master over nature, healer of body and soul, provider for all needs, Lord of life itself. But they also revealed something about those who witnessed them. Their faith, their doubts, their understanding or lack thereof. Some saw and believed, others saw and questioned, still others saw and opposed. The signs became a mirror, reflecting the condition of each heart that encountered them. They still do today, challenging us to examine our own response to the one who turned water to wine and broken lives to wholeness. Encounters of destiny, conversations that changed lives. The night air hung heavy over Jerusalem as Nicodemus made his way through darkened streets. As a member of the Sanhedrin, he couldn't risk being seen approaching Jesus openly. His heart pounded with each step. This wasn't just a clandestine meeting, it was a moment that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew. "Rabbi," Nicodemus began, his scholarly dignity evident in every word, "we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him." But Jesus saw past the careful words to the deeper question burning in Nicodemus's heart. His response cut straight to the core. "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." Confusion crossed Nicodemus's face. How can someone be born when they are old? The question revealed the struggle of a man trying to understand spiritual truth through the lens of human logic. Here was a master of the law, encountering a reality that transcended legal understanding. Jesus' words about being born of water and the Spirit challenged everything Nicodemus had built his life upon. As the conversation deepened, Jesus delivered words that would echo through centuries. "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever ever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." In the shadows of that night, a seed was planted in Nicodemus's heart. one that would later bloom in unexpected ways. The scene shifts dramatically to the heat of midday at Jacob's well in Samaria. A woman approached, carrying her water jar and the weight of social shame. She came at noon, avoiding the morning crowds and their judgmental whispers. But this day, someone was waiting, a Jewish man who would shatter every social and religious barrier. "Will you give me a drink?" Jesus' simple request startled her. Jews didn't speak to Samaritans, and men didn't address women in public. Her response carried years of bitter division. "How can you ask me for a drink?" But Jesus offered something far greater than water. If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The conversation that followed peeled away layers of cultural prejudice and personal pain. When Jesus revealed his knowledge of her 5 marriages, she didn't run in shame. Instead, she engaged deeper. "Sir, I can see that you are a prophet." Her questions about worship led to one of Jesus' most profound revelations. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth. The transformation was remarkable. The woman who came in shame left her water jar behind, running to tell others, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" Her past became her testimony. Her shame transformed into a witness that brought her entire village to Jesus. These weren't isolated encounters. Throughout John's Gospel, Jesus engaged in deeply personal conversations that revealed both human need and divine truth. With his disciples, he spoke of servant leadership while washing their feet. With Martha grieving for Lazarus, he revealed himself as the resurrection and the life. Each conversation peeled back another layer of his identity and purpose. When Thomas expressed doubt, Jesus didn't rebuke him, but invited him to touch his wounds. When Philip asked to see the Father, Jesus revealed the intimate unity between Father and Son. These weren't mere theological discussions. They were transformative encounters that changed lives forever. The pattern emerged clearly. Jesus met each person at their point of need, but didn't leave them there. He challenged their assumptions, pushed past their defenses, and offered truth that transformed their understanding. Whether speaking to a respected religious leader or a social outcast, he offered the same invitation to deeper life. These conversations continue to resonate because they touch universal human experiences. The search for meaning, the weight of shame, the longing for acceptance, the struggle with doubt. In each encounter, Jesus demonstrated that truth and grace aren't opposing forces, but essential partners in transformation. The Pharisee seeking truth in darkness, the woman finding dignity at a well, the disciples wrestling with understanding. Each encounter reveals something about how divine truth intersects with human need. These weren't just historical conversations. They were paradigms for how God continues to meet people today. The Last Supper, love's final testament. The upper room glowed with lamplight as evening shadows lengthened across Jerusalem. Jesus gathered with his disciples for what would be their final meal together, though only he fully understood the weight of this moment. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Judas's hand had already closed around 30 pieces of silver, and Peter's greatest test lay just hours ahead. Without a word, Jesus rose from the table. The disciples watched in confused silence as he removed his outer garment and wrapped a towel around his waist. The master of creation knelt before his followers like a common servant, taking their dusty feet in his hands. This wasn't just an act of service. It was a living parable of the love that would lead him to the cross. Peter recoiled when Jesus reached him. "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" His protest revealed both pride and love. "You shall never wash my feet." But Jesus' gentle response carried profound meaning. "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." This wasn't just about clean feet. It was about accepting the humble, sacrificial love that would soon be displayed on Calvary. As Jesus moved from disciple to disciple, the room grew silent except for the soft splash of water. These were the hands that had healed the sick and raised the dead, now performing the task of a slave. Each gesture spoke volumes. True greatness lies in serving others. Real power is revealed in humility. Genuine love stoops to meet the lowest need. After washing their feet, Jesus returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." The lesson was clear. Love must be demonstrated, not just declared. But the peace of this intimate moment was shattered by Jesus' next words. "Very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me." The disciples looked at one another in horror, each wondering if they could be capable of such treachery. When Jesus indicated Judas by sharing bread with him, the betrayer slipped into the night, darkness embracing darkness. With Judas gone, Jesus spoke with urgent tenderness to his remaining disciples. "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." This wasn't just another religious rule. It was the essence of his life and mission distilled into a single command. The measure of love was no longer abstract. It was the concrete example of Jesus himself. The disciples sensed something was ending, though they couldn't grasp what lay ahead. Peter, ever bold, declared, "I will lay down my life for you." Jesus' response was gentle but firm. "Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." As the meal drew to a close, Jesus lifted his eyes toward heaven in his final prayer with his disciples. His words revealed the depth of his love, not just for these followers, but for all who would later believe through their message. "Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am, and to see my glory." Even facing betrayal and death, his concern was for his followers' unity and their future joy. The evening ended with a hymn, their voices joining in ancient psalms of praise. As they stepped into the cool night air, heading toward the Garden of Gethsemane, none of them realized how these moments would be seared into their memory. The last peaceful moments before the storm broke, the final acts of love before sacrifice, the quiet before chaos erupted. The way of the cross, from death to glory. Dawn broke over Jerusalem as Jesus stood before Pilate, his hands bound, his face bearing the marks of a sleepless night of torture. The Roman governor studied him with a mixture of curiosity and frustration. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he demanded. Jesus' response was measured. "Is that your own idea, or did others talk to you about me?" In the courtyard below, the crowd grew restless. Their shouts echoed off stone walls. The same voices that had cried Hosanna days before now screamed, "Crucify him." Pilate's wife had sent him an urgent message, "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man." The governor found himself caught between political expediency and moral truth. "What is truth?" Pilate asked, but didn't wait for an answer. He attempted compromise, offering to release Jesus or Barabbas, a known criminal. The crowd's choice revealed the depths of human darkness. They chose a murderer over the author of life. Pilate's symbolic washing of hands couldn't cleanse him of responsibility. "I am innocent of this man's blood." The soldiers' mockery was cruel and deliberate. They crowned him with thorns, draped him in purple, and sneered, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Each blow, each taunt, fulfilled ancient prophecies written centuries before. The Creator endured the contempt of his creation, power clothed in vulnerability. The journey to Golgotha was a path of suffering. Jesus carried his cross until his strength failed, when Simon of Cyrene was forced to bear it. Women wept along the way, but Jesus turned to them. "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children." Even in his agony, his concern was for others. At the place called the Skull, they crucified him. John, the only disciple who hadn't fled, stood watching with Mary, Jesus' mother. Through waves of pain, Jesus spoke, "Woman, here is your son," and to John, "Here is your mother." Even in death, he provided for those he loved. The sky darkened at noon, as if creation itself couldn't bear to watch. Jesus' cry pierced the darkness. My God, why have you forsaken me?" The perfect fellowship of eternity was broken as he bore the weight of human sin. Then came his triumphant declaration, "It is finished." With these words, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. The earth shook. The temple veil tore from top to bottom. The barrier between God and humanity was destroyed, not by human effort but by divine sacrifice. The centurion who watched it all declared in awe, "Surely this man was the Son of God." But death would not have the final word. Early Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene discovered the empty tomb. She ran to tell Peter and John, who raced to see for themselves. The grave clothes lay folded, but the body was gone. While they struggled to understand, Mary remained weeping outside the tomb. Through her tears, she saw someone she thought was the gardener. "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him." Then Jesus spoke her name, Mary. In that moment, grief turned to joy, death gave way to life, and the greatest victory in history was revealed. The resurrection wasn't just a happy ending to a tragic story. It was the validation of everything Jesus had claimed: the Father's stamp of approval on the Son's sacrifice, the decisive triumph over sin and death. What seemed like defeat on Friday became victory on Sunday. Love's restoration, the power of grace revealed. The morning mist still clung to the Sea of Galilee as 7 discouraged disciples returned from a fruitless night of fishing. On the shore, a figure stood waiting, though in the dim light they didn't recognize him. His voice carried across the water, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" When they answered no, he called out, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat." The result was immediate and overwhelming. So many fish they couldn't haul in the net. John's eyes widened with recognition. "It is the Lord." Peter, impulsive as ever, plunged into the water, unable to wait for the boat to reach shore. The others followed more slowly, dragging their miraculous catch behind them. A charcoal fire burned on the beach, fish and bread already cooking. The scene must have struck Peter deeply. Another charcoal fire had burned in the high priest's courtyard where he had denied his Lord. But this fire spoke not of failure, but of restoration, not of shame, but of grace. After they had eaten, Jesus turned to Peter with a question that pierced to the heart. "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" The use of his old name was deliberate. Simon, not Peter the Rock. 3 times Jesus asked, matching Peter's 3 denials with 3 opportunities for affirmation. Each time, Peter's answer grew more urgent. "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." With each response, Jesus gave a commission. "Feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, feed my sheep." The man who had failed so publicly was being restored publicly, his ministry renewed, his purpose reaffirmed. But Jesus didn't stop there. He foretold the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God, a prophecy of martyrdom that Peter would face with courage born of this restoration. The story of Thomas provides another powerful testimony to Jesus' gentle handling of doubt. Thomas had declared he wouldn't believe unless he could touch Jesus' wounds. When Jesus appeared, he didn't rebuke Thomas's skepticism but invited him to believe. "Put your finger here, see my hands." Thomas's response became one of the greatest confessions of faith: "My Lord and my God." Jesus' words that followed speak to all future believers. "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This wasn't a criticism of Thomas, but an encouragement to those who would later come to faith through the testimony of others. These encounters reveal the heart of the risen Christ, not condemning failure, not rebuking doubt, but meeting each person at their point of need. The resurrection wasn't just about proving Jesus' power over death. It was about transforming lives, restoring relationships, and commissioning witnesses. John concludes his gospel by acknowledging that he has recorded only a fraction of Jesus' words and deeds. But what he has written serves a clear purpose: that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. This isn't just ancient history. It's an invitation that echoes through time. The same Jesus who restored Peter, convinced Thomas, and transformed countless lives continues to meet people today. The charcoal fire still burns on the shore of our failures, offering not condemnation but restoration. As modern readers encounter these stories, we're invited to see ourselves in them, in Peter's failure and restoration, in Thomas's doubt and faith, in John's witness to truth. The gospel ends not with a conclusion, but with an invitation to join this ongoing story of transformation. In the tapestry of life after 40, we often find ourselves confronting our own versions of Peter's denial, Thomas's doubt, or Nicodemus's nighttime searching. Perhaps we've experienced professional failures that echo Peter's moment of weakness, or faced personal crises that mirror the disciples' confusion after the crucifixion. The Gospel of John speaks powerfully to these midlife challenges, offering not just comfort, but profound insight into the nature of redemption and second chances. Like the Samaritan woman, many of us carry burdens from our past, failed relationships, career missteps, or family struggles. Yet her story reminds us that our past need not define our future. Jesus met her where she was, but didn't leave her there. Similarly, when we feel branded by our history, we're reminded that transformation remains possible at any age. The account of Peter's restoration particularly resonates with those who've experienced professional or personal setbacks. That morning by the Sea of Galilee teaches us that our greatest failures can become the foundation for our most meaningful contributions. The same grace that turned Peter's shame into purpose still operates today, transforming our wounds into wisdom. For those wrestling with doubt in their mature years, Thomas's story offers particular comfort. His skepticism wasn't met with rejection, but with understanding. In a world that often demands unwavering certainty, this reminds us that honest questioning can be part of a deeper journey toward truth. The message is clear. It's never too late for a new beginning, never too late to experience transformation, never too late to find purpose in pain. Whether we're facing retirement, reinvention, or reconciliation, John's Gospel reminds us that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead still works to resurrect hope, restore relationships, and renew purpose in our lives today.